So this is a chapter of an unpublished book. It's a novel, and it's called Harold and the Cat Killer. But people keep complaining about the title, so maybe that will change. This chapter will be coming out in American Short Fiction, which is a really cool literary journal that's also based now out of Austin, and you can purchase here. And I really dig it. It's one of the, I like literary journals, despite what I say here. But this is one of the few I subscribe to, because I'm cheap and I steal things. This is called Nativity. I've never been on good terms with God. I've always suspected that perhaps God was hunting me. Not in a good way, not in a shepherd searching for a lost sheep, more like a pissed-off loan shark looking for a payment. I know it's silly, and conceited even, to believe that I have the ability to offend the all-powerful monarch of existence. The idea is childish. But I think an event from my childhood might explain it. When I was young, I believed in God with the same certainty and apathy with which I believed in China. Both were far away and had little to do with my life. I believed in both because I had been told of both. I didn't know not believing in God was an option. God just was. My family went to church every now and then, and I'd be dropped off in the bright green and blue Sunday school room. One Sunday in early December, Miss Park, a single woman in her 40s, showed up to cast the live Christmas nativity scene. This was a Christmas tradition for our church, complete with an outdoor set, a slew of blue and yellow lights, and children dressed up like Romans, Israelites, and angels. A scratched album passed down through the years played the entire story, complete with a game show announcer-style narration and full choired carols. All the kids did was mouth along. Miss Park had been directing the Nativity for 10 years. For her, the event was as holy as any hymn, any prayer, any stained glass window, or Renaissance masterpiece. Miss Park cast most of the second graders as the angelic choir. A handful of fourth graders were assigned the roles of cowering shepherds. One lanky third grader was named King Herod, and the part of Mary was given to a girl named Mary, a coincidence which made the assignment inevitable to all of us. That year, Miss Park had also added the role of the little drummer boy. But there is no little drummer boy in the Bible, Mary pointed out. Oh yes, he's in there, Miss Park answered. He's not on the record, Mary said. We'll figure something out. And she gave the role to her 6-year-old nephew, Trevor. I, much to my surprise, was given the role of Joseph. Miss Park had forgotten to cast Joseph earlier, and since I hadn't volunteered for any role, I was the only option left. The star role of baby Jesus had been portrayed by the same plastic doll for the past decade. Its hair was spotty, one hand had snapped off, and the voice box that mewed, "Mama," each time that the doll was lifted had been broken for years. But the baby Jesus didn't need a cry for "Mama." He was just swaddled up lump to gaze at and be occasionally cuddled. We practiced for the next 2 weeks. The part was simple enough. I led a donkey carrying Mary to a makeshift stable built in the church parking lot, while the album describes our journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem, and being turned away at every inn. At this point, the focus of the story goes to stage left, where the shepherds are confronted by angels and told the news. By the time that the story returns to the stable, the baby Jesus has been born, swaddled, and laid to rest in a trough. All I had to do was stand by the trough/crib with Mary and look gooey and fatherly while shepherds and wise men visit. After the record announces the wise men's gifts and plays We Three Kings, Trevor has his big scene. He picks up a microphone, which is laying on the bale of hay by the trough, and recites the scene's one live line. We had a microphone hooked up just for it. "Jesus, I am so poor, all I have is a song," was all Trevor had to say. Then he has to place the microphone back down on the hay bale beside the sleeping Jesus doll. This gave Miss Park just enough time to change records to the Christmas Classics album, which played The Little Drummer Boy, while Trevor pretended to play and the rest of us swayed back and forth. At the end of the song, Miss Park put the Nativity album back on, and the show ended with an abbreviated version of Handel's Messiah being mouthed by angels everywhere, dressed in white sheets like hoodless Klan members. It was a hell of a show. Trevor did a fine job, except for his one line. He didn't say, "Jesus, I am so poor." He said, "Jesus, I am so poor." Like a low-wage earner, taking the Savior's name in vain. The first 2 nights went fine. A few angels cried on night 1, and the donkey nibbled on Mary's robe on night 2, but the show was a success. People even enjoyed the addition of the little drummer boy. On our last performance on Christmas Eve, the crowd was the biggest yet, flashing pictures as Mary and I entered from behind the gym. The donkey had been getting grumpier every night and was now protesting his involvement in the production by dropping balls of dung every other step. This wasn't so bad until a wise man approaching the cradle slipped on a dropping and doused the microphone with myrrh. Even that didn't seem so important until the record player went silent and Trevor reached for the wet microphone. Jesus was all he got out. He threw the microphone down and rubbed his hand. The microphone landed right on top of the head of baby Jesus with a nasty, amplified... For a moment, we were all quiet, wondering what to do next, when a miracle happened. The voice box inside baby Jesus came back to life. "Mama," said the baby Jesus. The crowd gasped. Jesus had a line. It looked like everything was going to be fine. But then the baby said, "Mama," again and again. "Mama." Mary, played by Mary, was too surprised by the change in script to react, so the new mother motionlessly stared down as her child called out for her. On the Jesus' fourth "Mama," the voice box got stuck, and the baby wailed one long "Mama." The cry slowed and warped as if Mary had accidentally birthed the baby Satan. I reached in and tried to move the microphone, but it shocked me. I yanked my hand away, shouted an expletive. I was told that later it looked like the newborn had snapped at my fingers. Miss Pock was desperately trying to get the little drummer boy to play on the record player, but the album was skipping. Rum-tum-tum, 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 rum-tum, like some hideous beating heart. Trevor was in tears, holding his hand. Mary still stared into the crib, aghast at the horror that she had brought into the world. The baby Jesus wailed on. The only way to save the show was to shut Jesus up. I tried to shift the doll, knocking it with quick jabs to avoid the microphone, and it looked as if I was portraying Joseph as an abusive father. None of it worked. If anything, it seemed that the doll was moaning louder. Finally, I picked Jesus up. The sound was coming from somewhere inside the doll's neck. My motives were good. I swear. I wanted things to go smoothly. But my next act was not well thought out. With a quick snap, I removed baby Jesus' head. The crying stopped. "Holy shit," said one of the shepherds. I heard a child scream from among the onlookers. In one hand, I had Jesus' head, and in the other, his body quickly unswaddling itself. Even the donkey seemed freaked out. The record player skipped to the next song on the Christmas album, which happened to be Frosty the Snowman. The lights went out, and the crowd, unsure what to do, applauded. In the dark, Mary leaned close to me and whispered, "You're gonna get it." Since then, I've always had the sneaking suspicion that I owed God, and sooner or later he was going to collect. I never voiced the fear, and never even gave it much conscious thought. But every time the doorbell rang, there was a part of me, a childish part, that expected the door to open and find God standing there. 20 years after decapitating Jesus, I opened my front door to find Harold Peaks. He was in his late 30s, a little thick around the waist, with a receding hairline and a goofy grin. I didn't know it at the time, but God had finally found me.